The summer sun was warm on Marcus Chun's back as he knelt in his garden, pulling weeds from between the tomato plants. He was 52 years old now, retired from a career that had taken him to dig sites on 4 different worlds. And he had finally found peace in this small piece of Montana. Lana's hands were deep in the soil when the communicator on his wrist began to pulse with a soft blue light. He recognized that color immediately. It was the shade the Thalassians use for matters of great importance. Marcus wiped his hands on his jeans and pressed the small button. The holographic display flickered to life, and his heart stopped when he saw the symbol rotating above his wrist. It was the seal of House Sauron, the ancient family crest of his oldest and dearest friend. The message was not from a living person. The timestamp told him it had been sent automatically upon the death of the sender. Velk Sauron was dead. Marcus sat down hard in the dirt, not caring about his clothes or the tomatoes he crushed beneath him. He had known this day would come eventually. The Thalassians lived for nearly 1,000 years, and Velkith had been 847, but knowing something will happen and feeling it happen are 2 very different things. He pressed play on the message, and suddenly Velkith was there before him, translucent and blue, but so real that Marcus almost reached out to touch him. The alien's face was long and elegant, with skin the color of deep ocean water and eyes like captured starlight. He looked tired in a way Marcus had never seen before, but his voice was still warm when he spoke. "My dear friend," Velkith said, "if you are seeing this, then my time has finally ended. I'm sorry I could not say goodbye in person, but the end came faster than I expected. I hope you can forgive an old diplomat for his poor planning." Marcus laughed despite the tears running down his face. That was so like Velkith, making jokes even at the end. "I have watched your species for 60 of your years." The recording continued. "I have seen what others in the Galactic Concord refuse to see. You are not the violent primitives they believe you to be. You are something far more dangerous and far more beautiful. You are hope itself given flesh and bone." The hologram shifted, and official documents began to scroll beside Velkith's image. Illegal text in a dozen languages, seals and signatures and stamps from authorities across the galaxy. "I have named you my sole heir. Marcus, this has never been done before. A Thalassian has never given their legacy to a human, and the Concord will fight you on this. They will say you are not worthy. They will say your species is too young, too brief, too chaotic to carry what I leave behind." Velkith leaned closer, and even though he was just light in memory, Marcus felt like his friend was really there. "They are wrong. You were worthy the first day I met you, when you were just a young student on your first dig, and I was a diplomat who had grown tired of the universe. You showed me kindness when no one else would. You reminded me why existence matters." The alien straightened and clasped his hands in the formal Thalassian gesture of sacred trust. "I leave you my estate on Thalassia Prime. I leave you my seat on the Concord Advisory Circle. I leave you access to my private archives, 800 years of knowledge and secrets, and I leave you something else, something I call the burden. I cannot explain it in this message. You will understand when you arrive." Velkith paused, and for a moment he looked unsure, almost afraid. "You must come to Thalassia Prime within 30 of your solar days to claim the inheritance. If you do not, everything reverts to the Concord, and the burden will be lost forever. I know this is asking much of you. I know you have built a quiet life for yourself, but I would not ask if it was not important." The hologram flickered, a sign that the message was ending. "You once asked me why I chose to spend so much of my long life among humans. I told you I was studying your species, learning your ways, but that was not the whole truth. The truth is that you taught me how to live again. You taught me that meaning is not found in the length of our days, but in how we choose to spend them." Velkith smiled. And it was the same smile Marcus remembered from 1,000 shared meals, 1,000 conversations, 1,000 moments of simple friendship. Thank you for being my friend. Marcus, thank you for showing an old alien that the universe still has wonders left to discover. I will miss you. Even though I go now where missing is not possible. Be brave, be stubborn, be human. The message ended. And Marcus was alone again, sitting in his garden with dirt on his hands and grief in his heart. He stayed there for a long time, watching the sun move across the sky, he remembered the first time he met Velkith. On a dig site where the alien had arrived to observe human archaeological methods, Marcus had been the only one willing to share his lunch with the strange visitor. The only one who treated him like a person instead of a specimen. He remembered Velkith learning to fish, standing waist-deep in a Montana river, laughing at his own clumsiness as he tried to cast a line. He remembered sitting together in silence after Marcus's wife Sarah had died. No words needed. Just two friends sharing pain across the vast gulf between their species. He remembered all of it, every moment. And he understood why Velkith had chosen him. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small stone. Smooth and dark, carved with symbols he had never been able to read. Velkith had given it to him on that first day, decades ago, calling it a token of friendship. Marcus had carried it ever since. A reminder that the universe was bigger and stranger and more wonderful than he had ever imagined. He looked at the stone, then at the sky, then at the garden he had built for his quiet retirement. The Galactic Concord would fight him. Every alien species that had ever looked down on humanity would line up to block his claim. They would call him unworthy, primitive, a mayfly trying to inherit the wind. But Velkith had believed in him. Velkith had seen something in humanity that no one else could see. And Velkith had trusted him with something called the burden. Something so important it could not even be explained in a message. Marcus stood up, brushed the dirt from his clothes, and walked toward his house. He had a ship to catch. The ship dropped out of hyperspace, and Marcus pressed his face against the viewport, like a child seeing snow for the first time. A Thalassia Prime hung before him. A world of impossible beauty. Oceans glowed with soft bioluminescence, painting the night side of the planet in swirls of blue and green. Crystal spires rose from the continents, catching the light of the system's twin suns and scattering it into rainbows that danced across the atmosphere. Marcus had seen images of this world his entire life. Every human child learned about Thalassia Prime in school. The heart of the Galactic Concord, the center of civilization. But pictures could not capture the reality of it. Nothing could. The ship descended through layers of cloud and light, and Marcus tried to prepare himself for what was coming. He had spent the 3-week journey studying Thalassian law and custom, learning the rituals he would need to know. But all his preparation felt meaningless now, facing the reality of what he was about to attempt. No human had ever inherited from an alien. No human had ever claimed a seat on the advisory circle. He was walking into the heart of galactic civilization to demand something that had never been given. Before the spaceport was a cathedral of living crystal, grown rather than built over thousands of years. Thalassians moved through its halls with the slow grace of beings who measured their lives in centuries. They towered over Marcus, most of them standing at least 8 feet tall, their blue skin shimmering with patterns that shifted with their moods. They stared at him as he walked past. He could feel their curiosity and their contempt. To them, he was barely more than an insect, a creature whose entire lifespan was a rounding error in their calendars. A young Thalassian was waiting for him at the end of the arrival hall. She was beautiful in the way all her species were beautiful. Tall and elegant with eyes like captured moons, but her skin patterns pulsed with colors Marcus recognized as hostility. "I am Salith Mora," she said, her voice cold. "Niece of Velketh Soran, I am here to escort you to the Inheritance Council." "Thank you," Marcus said. "I appreciate your help. Do not thank me. Human, I am not here to help you. I am here to witness your failure and ensure that my uncle's legacy does not fall into unworthy hands." Marcus nodded slowly. He had expected this. The records Velkith left behind mentioned that he had been estranged from his family for centuries. They had never understood his fascination with humanity, his belief that the young species had something to offer the galaxy. "Your uncle was a good friend to me," Marcus said. "Whatever happens, I want you to know that I loved him very much." Something flickered across Selith's face. A crack in her cold exterior, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Love," she said. "Such a human word, so brief and burning. Like everything about your species. Follow me, the council is waiting." The Inheritance Council met in a chamber that made Marcus feel like an ant standing inside a geode. Crystals the size of buildings surrounded him. Humming with energy that made his teeth ache, 12 Thalassians sat on raised platforms, looking down at him with ancient eyes. Selith stepped forward and spoke in the formal legal language of her people. Marcus understood enough to know she was challenging his claim. She argued that humans lacked the emotional depth to honor a Thalassian legacy, that their brief lives made them incapable of understanding what they would inherit. The head of the council, an ancient Thalassian whose skin had faded to pale silver with age, raised one long hand for silence. "The challenge is noted," he said. "By law, the claimant may prove his worth through the 3 trials. Do you accept this test?" Human Marcus swallowed hard. He knew about the trials from his studies. The trial of memory, the trial of patience, and the trial of sacrifice. Many Thalassians failed these tests. Humans had never even attempted them. "I accept," he said. The trial of memory came first. Marcus was placed in the center of the chamber while crystals projected images and sounds around him. He was asked to share moments from his friendship with Velkith, to demonstrate that he truly knew the person whose legacy he claimed. He did not speak of diplomatic achievements or political victories. Instead, he told them about small things. He told them about teaching Velkith to fish, standing together in cold water while the alien laughed at his own failures. He told them about Velkith learning to appreciate human jokes, the way his skin would pulse with bright colors when something truly amused him. He told them about sitting together in silence after Sarah died. No words needed, just presence. The council members listened with growing surprise. Such intimate knowledge of a Thalassian's private self was rare even among their own kind. Velkith had truly let this human into his heart. The trial of patience came next. Marcus was placed in a chamber of pure white light while Thalassian telepaths entered his mind. For 72 hours they examined him, pulling apart his memories and emotions, searching for weakness. It was the worst thing Marcus had ever experienced. They found every fear he had ever known, every failure, every moment of doubt and darkness. They showed him his own smallness, his own mortality, the cosmic insignificance of his entire species. But they also found something else, deep in the core of him. Past all the fear and pain, they found something that refused to break. It was hope, pure and stubborn and completely irrational. It was the belief that things could be better, that effort mattered, that love was worth the risk of loss. One of the telepaths, an ancient female whose eyes had seen the rise and fall of empires, withdrew from his mind with something like wonder in her expression. "I have examined 10,000 minds across 500 years," she told the council. "I have never encountered anything like this. The fire in him should have burned out long ago, but it simply refuses to die." Marcus collapsed when the trial ended, exhausted beyond anything he had ever known, but he had passed 2 trials down, 1 to go. The head of the council rose from his seat. His expression was unreadable. "You have shown knowledge and endurance beyond what we expected. But the trial of sacrifice remains. This trial is different. For each claimant, we cannot tell you what it will require. Only that you must descend to the deep archives beneath the Sauron estate. There you will find what my old friend Velketh called the burden. He paused, and for the first time Marcus saw something like concern in the ancient alien's eyes. The burden is not a metaphor. Human, it is a living thing, and it has been waiting for you for a very long time. Go now, find out what my friend believes you worthy to carry. Marcus stood on shaking legs. Salith was staring at him with an expression he could not read. The contempt was still there, but mixed with something else now, something that might have been the beginning of respect. I will escort you, she said quietly. I want to see what my uncle thought was worth dying for. Together they walked out of the council chamber, toward the estate of House Sauron, toward the truth that Velketh had hidden for 800 years. The deep archives were cold and dark, carved into the living rock beneath the Sauron estate, thousands of years before Marcus was born. Crystals lined the walls, but their light was dim and blue, giving everything the feeling of being. Underwater, Salith walked beside him in silence. Her earlier hostility had faded into something more like nervous curiosity. She had never been allowed in the deep archives before. No one in her family had. Velketh had sealed them 800 years ago and never explained why the passage descended deeper and deeper until Marcus lost all sense of how far underground they had traveled. The air grew thick with age, heavy with secrets that had been kept for centuries. Finally, they emerged into a vast chamber. Marcus stopped breathing. Chamber was filled with light, soft golden light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The walls were covered with writing in a language Marcus had never seen, symbols that seemed to move and shift when he looked at them directly. And in the center of the room, floating above a pedestal of black stone, was something that looked like a star captured in glass. What is this place? Salith whispered. Her voice trembled in a way Marcus had never heard from a Thalassian. Marcus walked forward, drawn toward the glowing object by something he could not name. As he got closer, he began to hear whispers, thousands of voices speaking just below the level of understanding. They were not Thalassian voices. They were something far older. A hologram flickered to life beside the pedestal, and Velketh appeared again. He looked younger in this recording, strong and vital, but his eyes were filled with a weight that Marcus now recognized. If you are seeing this, Marcus, then you have passed the first 2 trials and come to face the truth. I wish I could have told you in person. I wish I could have prepared you. But some things cannot be explained. They must be experienced. Velketh's image gestured toward the glowing sphere. 800 years ago, I was part of an expedition to the far edge of the galaxy. We found the ruins of a civilization so ancient that even our oldest records held no memory of them. We called them the architects because they built the hyperspace lanes that connect all the worlds of the Concord. Without them, galactic civilization would not exist. The hologram shifted to show images of vast structures floating in space, machines the size of planets, technology beyond anything Marcus had ever imagined. The architects vanished 3 million years ago. We never knew why until we found this. Velketh pointed at the sphere. This is not a device, Marcus. It is a seed, a compressed consciousness containing the collective memory and knowledge of an entire species. The architects saw their end coming, and they preserved themselves this way. They were waiting for someone worthy to carry their legacy forward. Marcus stared at the sphere. His hands were shaking. I took the burden into myself that day. I thought I could handle it. I was young and arrogant, and I believed that a Thalassian lifespan would be enough time to do what needed to be done. I was wrong. Velketh's image flickered with pain. The burden is slowly killing me. Marcus, it has been killing me for 800 years. Thalassian minds are too slow, too careful. We process information over centuries. But the burden demands immediate presence. It demands someone who lives fully in each moment, who burns rather than smolders. The hologram turned to look directly at Marcus. And even though it was just light and memory, Marcus felt the weight of his friend's gaze. That is why I chose you. That is why I spent 60 years among humans, searching for the one who could carry what I could not. Your species lives brief lives, but you live them more intensely than any being I have ever known. You do not merely exist. You burn with purpose and passion and love. Marcus. Humanity is not the primitive species the Concord believes you to be. You are exactly what the universe needs. You are hope that refuses to die. Love that defies logic. Courage that laughs at impossible odds. You are the carriers the architects were waiting for. Valkith's expression grew serious, even frightened. But there is something else you must know. The architects did not die of natural causes. They were not destroyed by war or accident. They were harvested by something they called the silence, an entity or force that has been pruning advanced civilizations from the galaxy for millions of years. The silence believes that consciousness is a mistake. That awareness must be controlled before it grows too bright. It is still out there. Marcus is patient beyond imagination and has begun to notice the galactic concord. The hologram faded, leaving only the sphere and its golden light. Marcus stood frozen. He could feel Selith behind him, could hear her quick breathing as she processed what they had learned. Her uncle had been carrying the weight of an entire civilization for 800 years. He had been dying slowly, learning from the inside, all while searching for someone to pass the torch to. The sphere pulsed, and the whispers grew louder. They were not frightening. Marcus realized they were welcoming. They had been waiting for him. He reached out his hand. Marcus. Wait, Selah said. You do not know what this will do to you. No. Marcus agreed. But your uncle believed in me. He believed in humanity. And if there is something out there that threatens all of us, human and Thalassian alike, then someone has to face it. He touched the sphere. The universe exploded suddenly. Marcus was everywhere and nowhere. He was standing on a world that no longer existed, watching stars being born. He was floating in the void between galaxies, feeling the slow pulse of cosmic time. He was a billion different beings, living a billion different lives, loving and losing and hoping and dying across millions of years. He saw the architects at their height, a civilization so advanced they had become something like gods. He saw them building the hyperspace lanes, connecting worlds separated by impossible distances. He saw them nurturing young species, guiding them toward the stars, and he saw their end. The silence came like a wave of nothing, cold and perfect logic that swept across the galaxy, finding civilizations that had grown too bright and snuffing them out. The architects fought back with everything they had. But you cannot fight an idea with weapons. You cannot defeat a principle of the universe with armies. So they did the only thing they could. They preserved themselves. They compressed their consciousness into a seed and hid it away, hoping that someday, somehow, someone would be worthy to carry their legacy forward. The visions faded, and Marcus found himself on his knees in the chamber, gasping for breath. He was different now. He could feel the weight of 3 million years pressing down on his mind, the voices of billions of beings whispering in his thoughts. But he could also feel something else, something vast and cold and patient, turning its attention toward this corner of the galaxy, like someone noticing a candle flame in the darkness. The silence had felt. The burden changed hands. It knew that the architect's legacy had finally found a new carrier, and it was curious. Selith knelt beside him, her hands on his shoulders. Her skin patterns were cycling through colors he had never seen before, emotions too complex for him to read. What happened? She demanded. What did you see? Marcus looked up at her, and she flinched back from his eyes. They were different now. Deeper, there were stars in them and ancient pain. And something that looked very much like hope. I saw everything, he said. I saw what your uncle has been carrying all these years. I saw why he chose humanity. He stood up slowly, feeling the weight of civilizations in his bones. And I saw what is coming. The silence, the thing that destroyed the architects. It has been dormant for 3 million years. But it is waking up now. The concord has grown too bright. And the silence has noticed. Sayla's face went pale, which for a Thalassian meant her skin faded to almost white. How long do we have? Marcus closed his eyes and listened to the whispers of the architects. They showed him patterns and predictions. The cold mathematics of cosmic destruction. The architects thought they had centuries. He said, they were wrong. Then we have months, maybe less. He opened his eyes and looked at her, for the first time since they had met. She was not looking at him with contempt or suspicion. She was looking at him with fear, and under that was something that might have been the beginning of trust. We need to tell the Concord, Marcus said. We need to warn everyone. Saleth nodded slowly. They will not believe you. They will think you are mad, or lying, or trying to manipulate them. Then we will have to convince them. Marcus smiled. And even now, even carrying the weight of an entire dead civilization, even knowing what was coming, his smile was warm and human and alive. That is what humans do. We convince people to hope when hope seems impossible. Together, they walked out of the deep archives, toward a galaxy that did not yet know it was in danger. 1 year had passed since the stars began going dark. War against the silence was unlike anything the galaxy had ever known. There were no battlefields, no armies clashing in the void. The silence did not fight with weapons, it fought with despair. It crept into minds and showed them the truth of their own insignificance. The pointlessness of struggle, the mercy of simply letting go. Civilizations that had stood for millions of years crumbled in weeks as their people lost the will to continue. The silence did not need to destroy them. It simply showed them that destruction was easier than existence. But something strange was happening. Something the silence had never encountered in its 3 million years of pruning the galaxy. Humanity was not breaking. Human scientists worked themselves to exhaustion developing new technologies. Not because they expected to survive, but because the knowledge might help someone else. Human soldiers volunteered for missions they knew they would not return from. And they went laughing and joking and alive in their final moments. Human artists created beauty in the shadow of extinction. Because beauty mattered, especially when the end was near, and slowly, impossibly, the other species began to remember what they had forgotten. The Thalassians, who had spent centuries debating every decision, learned to act in the moment. A young diplomat named Seleth led the charge, taking risks that would have horrified her ancestors, making choices based on hope rather than calculation. The Var swarm, which had always valued the collective over the individual, began to celebrate single acts of heroism. A lone warrior who held a defensive line for 3 days became a legend sung in every hive. The crystalline Maketh, who had never understood emotion, began to resonate with feelings they could not name. They called it the human frequency, this strange vibration that made existence feel meaningful. Marcus watched all of this from the heart of the resistance. He was old now by human standards, his hair white and his body worn, but the burden kept him going. The voices of the architects whispering strength into his bones. He had become something new, neither fully human nor fully architect, but a bridge between what was and what could be. He did not lead through commands or strategies. He led by example, by showing everyone around him what it looked like to hope. When hope seemed foolish, the final confrontation came on a world at the edge of the dying zone, a planet where the silence had chosen to manifest itself in a form that living minds could comprehend. It appeared as absence, a shape cut out of reality. darker than darkness, colder than the void between galaxies when it spoke. His voice was the silence between heartbeats, the pause before grief, the emptiness that waits at the end of all things. "You have fought well," the silence said. "Better than any who came before, but the outcome was never in doubt. Consciousness is an error, a fevered dream of matter that believes itself important. I am the cure. I am the mercy that ends the suffering of awareness." Marcus stood before it, small and old and mortal. The representatives of 100 species stood behind him, all of them trembling, all of them fighting the despair that radiated from the silence like cold from ice. "You are right," Marcus said. The words shocked everyone, even the silence. "Consciousness is suffering. You are correct about that. Every species that achieves sentience learns this truth. Awareness hurts. To know that you exist is to know that you will end. To love is to guarantee loss. To hope is to invite disappointment." The silence pulsed with something that might have been satisfaction. "Then you understand you. See why my work is necessary. Why pruning awareness from the universe is the greatest kindness possible." "No," Marcus said. "I understand why you believe that. But you have made a mistake so fundamental that you have been wrong for 3 million years." He stepped forward, and the light of the architects blazed in his eyes. "Pain is not the opposite of meaning, it is the proof of it. We hurt because we love. We grieve because we lived. Every tear is evidence that something mattered. If existence was truly pointless, we would feel nothing. But we feel everything, and that feeling is what makes us real." The silence flickered, uncertainty rippling through its form. "You want to end suffering by ending consciousness. But we choose differently. We choose to suffer. We choose to love anyway. We choose to build and create and hope, knowing it will all turn to dust." Marcus spread his arms wide, and threw the burden, through his connection to every mind fighting beside him. He reached out. "That is not weakness. That is the bravest thing in the universe." He showed the silence what it had never understood. He opened himself completely, letting the ancient entity see into the depths of human experience. He showed it a mother singing to her child in the dark. He showed it friends reuniting after years apart. He showed it the quiet joy of a sunset watched with someone beloved. He showed it laughter and music and dancing for no reason at all. He showed it the human heart in all its terrible, beautiful, defiant glory. The silence was old beyond measure. It had extinguished 100 civilizations, ended countless trillions of lives, enforced its cold logic across 3 million years, but it had never felt and had never known what it was like to be small and brief, and certain of death, yet still find reasons to smile. It had never understood how creatures who knew they would end could still choose to love, to create, to hope. The images Marcus shared were not weapons. They were invitations. They were a question that the silence had never thought to ask. What if consciousness is not an error? What if it is the point? What if the universe created awareness not by accident, but because awareness is how the universe learns to love itself? The silence did not speak for a long time. When it finally responded, its voice was different, changed. "I do not understand you," it said. "I have existed since the first stars, and I do not understand how you can embrace the pain I was created to end. That is because you have never tried," Marcus said gently. "You have spent 3 million years judging consciousness from the outside, but you have never experienced it from within. Would you like to?" The offer hung in the air, impossible and genuine. You cannot destroy something you truly understand, and you cannot understand humanity until you have felt what we feel. Live one human lifetime. Know love and loss and joy and grief. Feel what it is like to be brief and bright and burning. Then make your judgment. The silence was still for what felt like eternity then. It began to change. Not disappearing, but transforming. The absence became presence. The cold became something warmer. The ancient entity that had pruned consciousness from the galaxy for 3 million years made a choice that no one could have predicted it. Chose to learn. The silence withdrew, not in defeat, but in contemplation. It would return someday, perhaps. But when it did, it would be different. It would have felt what it had so long denied. It would understand what Marcus had tried to show it. The galaxy had been given a reprieve. Marcus collapsed as the tension left his body. Salith caught him before he hit the ground. Her skin patterns were cycling through colors he had never seen before, tears in the Thalassian way. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually did it. We did it," Marcus corrected her. "All of us, every species that chose to stand and fight. Every being who refused to surrender to despair. This was never about one human. It was about what all of us can become when we choose. Hope over fear." 3 years later, Marcus died peacefully in his garden in Montana, surrounded by friends both human and alien. The burden had finally released him, passing to a new carrier chosen by the architects from among the species that had learned to hope. Salith spoke at his memorial. The crystal spires of Thalassia Prime glittered behind her, but she had chosen to hold the ceremony on Earth in the small town where Marcus had grown up. "He was my uncle's greatest discovery," she said. "Not because of what he knew, but because of what he believed. He believed that existence is worth the pain, that love is worth the loss, that the mayfly burning bright for a single day has something to teach the mountain standing for 1,000,000 years. She looked out at the gathered crowd, humans and Thalassians and Varith and Makith and a dozen other species all standing together in a Montana field. The galaxy is vast and ancient. We have seen empires rise and fall, stars born and die. But we had never seen anything like humanity. They arrived late. They were small and fragile and brief, and they saved us all. The stone that Marcus had carried his whole life, the one Velkith had given him so long ago, was placed at the heart of a new monument. It bore a simple inscription in 100 languages: "We were here. We mattered. We loved." Below it, in humanity's own words. And that was enough. Sun set over Montana, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. In the distance, the stars shone bright and steady, no longer going dark. The universe continued its ancient dance. Civilizations rose and fell, stars were born and died, and consciousness spread ever outward into the void. And in all that vastness, in all that time, one truth remained a truth: that a small, brief species had taught the galaxy existence is not a burden to be endured. It is a gift to be celebrated. Every moment of awareness, every heartbeat of love, every act of courage matters. Not because it lasts forever, but because it happens. And all that is the legacy Marcus Chen left behind. Not the burden of the architects, not the seat on the Concorde, not the victory over the silence. Just a simple truth written on a stone in a Montana field. We were here. We mattered. We loved. And that was enough. The Concorde High Chamber was the largest enclosed space Marcus had ever seen, a dome of living crystal arched overhead, so high that clouds formed near its peak. Representatives from 100 different species filled the galleries, beings of every shape and size and color, all of them staring down at the small human standing alone on the central platform. Word of the burden had spread faster than light. News that a human now carried the consciousness of the architects, the mythical builders of galactic civilization, had thrown the Concorde into chaos. Some demanded that Marcus be studied. Others wanted him executed before the silence noticed. A few wanted to worship him as a prophet, the speaker of the Concorde, a massive creature that looked like a living mountain made of stone and moss. Called for silence. The galleries quieted, and 100 alien gazes fixed on Marcus with emotions ranging from curiosity to fear to open hatred. "You have requested to address the full Concorde," the speaker rumbled. "This is unprecedented. A human has never spoken to this body before. Say what you have come to say." Marcus looked around the chamber, at the gathered representatives. He saw the Thalassians in their robes of woven light. He saw the insectoid Vorith, clicking their mandibles in agitation. He saw the crystalline Maketh humming with barely contained energy. He saw a dozen other species he could not name. All of them ancient, all of them powerful, all of them convinced that humanity was nothing more than a cosmic afterthought. He opened his mouth, and the voices of the architects whispered through him, giving him words in a language that all beings understood. "You are afraid of me," Marcus said. "I understand you have built your civilization over millions of years. And now a creature from a species, barely out of its cradle, stands before you carrying the greatest gift in galactic history. You think I am not worthy. You think humanity is not ready." Murmurs rippled through the galleries. The Vorith clicked angrily. The Thalassian delegate shouted something that Marcus did not catch. "You are right to question me," I questioned myself when I first touched the burden. "I am small and brief. My entire lifespan is less than a heartbeat to most of you. How can such a creature carry the weight of 3 million years?" He paused, letting the question hang in the air. "Let me tell you about humanity. Let me tell you about my people." Marcus began to walk slowly across the platform, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. 100 years ago, a great ship was sinking in cold water. There were not enough lifeboats for everyone. The ship's musicians could have fought for places on those boats. Instead, they stood on the deck and played music. They played until the water took them. They chose to bring beauty into the world in their final moments rather than add to the panic and fear. The chamber was silent now. Even the Vorith had stopped clicking. 50 years after that, a disease swept through one of our cities. It was a terrible plague that killed everyone it touched. Our doctors could have stayed away. They could have protected themselves and let the sick die alone. Instead, they walked into the infected zones. Knowing they would never walk out, they chose to give comfort to strangers even though it cost them everything. Marcus stopped in the center of the platform and looked up at the speaker. "When our buildings have collapsed, our people run toward the rubble, not away when our ships are burning. There are always those who stay behind to help others escape when our children are in danger. We throw ourselves between them and harm without hesitation. You think this is weakness? You think our brief lives make us reckless and foolish, but you are wrong. Our brief lives are exactly why we are brave. We know that every moment matters. We know that we cannot waste time waiting for better circumstances. We know that the only time to do good is now, because soon there will be no more now." A Thalassian delegate rose from her seat. It was Salith. Her skin patterns were calm blue, the color of serious truth. "I challenge the human to prove these claims," she said formally. "Let him show us what humanity truly is." Marcus looked at her and saw the smallest hint of a smile on her alien face. She was giving him an opening. She was helping him. Reached out with the power of the burden, connecting to the vast archives of the architects. They had watched humanity from afar, curious about this strange young species that seemed so different from all the others. Now, Marcus used that knowledge to show the Concord what they had never bothered to see. Images filled the chamber, projected by the crystals. Responding to his will, he showed them a mother holding her newborn child, the pure love in her eyes that needed no translation. He showed them friends laughing together for no reason at all, the joy of simple connection. He showed them elderly couples holding hands after 60 years together, love that had only grown stronger with time. He showed them firefighters charging into burning buildings. He showed them doctors working through the night to save a single life. He showed them ordinary people standing up to injustice, even when they knew they would lose. He showed them artists creating beauty that would outlast their brief lives, and scientists searching for truth they would never fully find. and dreamers reaching for stars they would never touch. This is humanity. Marcus said, "We are not wise like the Thalassians. We are not ancient like the Maketh. We are not powerful like the Varith. We are small and brief, and we know it. But knowing that we will die has taught us something that eternal beings sometimes forget. It has taught us that meaning is not found in duration. It is found in what you choose to do with the time you have." He turned to face all of them, and the light of the architects blazed in his eyes. The silence is coming. It believes that consciousness is a mistake. That awareness must be pruned before it grows too bright. It has destroyed civilizations far greater than any of ours. It destroyed the architects themselves. You cannot defeat it with fleets or weapons. It is not an enemy that can be fought in any way you understand to survive. You will need something else. You will need the ability to hope when hope seems impossible. You will need the courage to love even though loss is certain. You will need to find meaning in the struggle itself, not just in victory. That is what humanity can teach. That is why Velkith chose us. That is why the burden passed to a human, and not to one of your ancient and powerful species. Marcus lowered his head. You can reject me if you wish. You can take the burden by force and give it to someone you consider worthy, but I am telling you now that you will need humanity in the days to come, not because we are better than you, but because we are different, because we have learned to find joy in the shadow of death, to build meaning from nothing, to love without any guarantee of return. The silence has never encountered anything like us, and that is your best hope of survival. The chamber was completely still. Then the speaker moved, the great stone body shifting with a sound like grinding mountains. We will vote, the speaker said. The human has spoken. All delegates will now decide. The voting took hours. Each species had its own process, its own way of making decisions. Marcus stood on the platform the entire time, waiting, feeling the weight of the burden and the cold attention of the silence somewhere in the darkness between stars. When the results were announced, Marcus felt his legs go weak. The vote was close, closer than anyone had expected, but it had passed by a margin of just 7 votes. Marcus was granted provisional custody of the burden, becoming the first human to hold any position of power in Galactic civilization. Salith met him as he left the chamber. Her skin patterns were cycling through colors. He was beginning to understand. You did it, she said. You actually convinced them, for now. Marcus said, but convincing them was the easy part. Now we have to survive what is coming. They walked together toward a balcony overlooking the crystal city of Thalasia Prime. The twin suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Then Marcus stopped in the distance. Beyond the beauty of the sunset, he could see stars beginning to go dark, one by one. Their light was simply stopping. It was not an eclipse or a cloud. It was something far worse. The silence had stopped waiting. How long? Salith whispered. Marcus listened to the architects. Their fear echoed through. 3 million years of memory. Months, he said. Maybe less. Salith stared at the dying stars. Her hands were trembling. Then we have no time. We cannot prepare. We cannot. Marcus turned to her, and despite everything, despite the weight of civilizations on his shoulders and the darkness spreading across the sky, he smiled. Then we had better get started.